Okay, so hi Matt, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. Good. Thanks for the invite onto the Ocean Show. Looking forward to it.
No problem, it's great to have you involved. Really glad to have you here, mate.
No worries.
Right, so should we kick off?
Yeah, that's cool. It's a really good connection, actually, isn't it? You wouldn't think we was like on the opposite sides of the planet. Yeah. So I'm Matty Smith, originally from Newark in Nottinghamshire in the UK, and I live in a place called Stanwell Park now, which is about an hour south of Sydney, Australia. I've been here since 2007. Yeah, loving it. Got the Pacific Ocean as my playground right outside my front door, so happy days.
When I first met you, you were just at the start, it's about 2007, you were just at the start of your photography career.
Yeah.
And I think we were on a shoot and we went and shot some professional surfers up in North Devon. And since then, you've moved to Australia.
Yeah.
And just gone on to some amazing things. So could you just tell me a little bit about the sorts of photography you do now?
Sure.
And yeah.
Yeah, no dramas. Actually, when we first met, I do remember that really well. That was down, I think it was around Plymouth we went for a shoot, weren't we, around 2006. And that was when you put me in contact with the editor of Pit Pilot magazine. And they started getting published in there. Somebody Moran his name was, wasn't it? What was his name?
Joe Moran.
Moran, that's right, Joe Moran. Yeah, that's started the memories flooding back. Yeah, so as you say, I've actually been shooting since around the mid '90s, but it was land based up until around the mid 2000s. Still ocean based photography, but from the land. And then, as you say, I got into the ocean, started shooting predominantly from the water. And in fact, today it's all from the water. All my shooting, I don't very rarely take a picture when their camera's not in a water housing, really. But yeah, I emigrated to Australia in 2007. I was still shooting predominantly surf at that time, but very quickly when I got over here, I realised that the place where I live has got some incredible dive spots too for marine wildlife, natural history type shooting, and that really is what I kind of started going into. So although I still have a big passion for surf and surf photography, basically what I do now is more under the water rather than in the waves. So I've kind of organically changed into more of an underwater photographer, and that's really where I started to get a little bit successful, I suppose. Like it's more my underwater imagery that's been the change in my career and the foot in the door to some great jobs, I suppose you could say.
If anyone who knows your work, it's absolutely incredible. But
Thank you.
You've had some really big accolades in your career so far. I mean, you've had sort of awards from National Geographic magazine, BBC.
Yeah.
You had a Nikon kind of campaign, so the Nikon cameras that have used your photography for their sort of advertising campaign, and you're now a Nikon Ambassador, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So when it was around 2014, me and Nikon first it was about 2014, Nikon first contacted me and asked me what gear I use, and I've always been a Nikon shooter for, since I first started shooting the water anyway. So yeah, I was kind of like never really like to call it sponsored, but I was a Nikon supported photographer for probably around 3 to 4 years, from 2014 to 2018, and then in 2018 I got promoted to Nikon Ambassador, which now means that obviously I shoot exclusively for Nikon and do various things in association with Nikon, such as photography trips, underwater photography trips, Nikon schools. I teach underwater photography techniques through the Nikon school, and quite a few other things. They kind of support me on personal projects too, and obviously all the gear involved. So yeah, they've really supported, really great company. I'm kind of proud to be in association with them, to be honest, because they're a great team.
And was there a particular moment or photograph or award or something that you really felt was the kickstart to your career? I mean, obviously you've done lots before then, but what was that one key moment?
the big turning point was the portfolio of blue bottles I did. So blue bottles are a type of Portuguese man-o'-war, which is often called a jellyfish, so it's technically not. It's an animal called a siphonophore. And the blue bottles over here, they're not actually Portuguese man-o'-war, they're called Pacific man-o'-war, which are a smaller version of a blue bottle. They're much smaller than the ones that you get in the Atlantic, the Portuguese man-o'-war. But these blue bottles, as they're sort of colloquially named over here, I started shooting a portfolio of those. So I've always been to shooting split level photography. So photography that's half over and half under the water. It's been a big passion of mine, and it's been something I've been pursuing for a long time to get it perfect. And I thought, as the blue bottle lives its life half over and half under the water, it kind of floats on the surface with its big ear sac and these big long blue tentacles underneath it. I decided to shoot a portfolio of pictures of those, mostly at sunrise, because they're a beautiful electric blue colour when you put some light underneath them, as in like a strobe, which is like an underwater flash gun. They just pop this wonderful blue colour. So, and I knew a bay where they used to get washed into quite a lot that faced straight east in the summer. So the sunrise would just come up straight between the two headlands of this nice bay. And so I set about, probably took me 6 months to put a portfolio of really strong images together of those blue bottles in that bay at sunrise. And I knew when I took the first few frames, although they were far from perfect, I was onto something a little bit special, something different that I'd not seen before, and a point of difference, I guess, from other photographers. So I never really told anyone when I was doing it, and never posted anything on Instagram or anything like that. So probably for the first year or so, the only person that saw those shots was my wife, Lauren, and a few close friends. So I really sat on them and waited for the big comps to come around, and then sort of spammed all the competitions with various connotations of this concept of this blue bottle photo. And that was in 2014. And that year did really well for me. So I won the overall Australian Geographic Nature Photographer of the Year award. I won first, second and third prize places in the Ocean Geographic Awards. And then I was placed also in the London Natural History Museum Awards. So I actually came over to London for those awards, where we had this big award ceremony, black tie award ceremony, which was really nice. David Attenborough was there presenting, and Kate Middleton was there, and it was a really special night in the London Natural History Museum. So that year, those three sort of accolades all closely grouped together in 2014 was really, I guess, what got my name out there. And from that point, that's when Nikon got in contact, when they sort of learned of those awards, and various few other people. Aquatica Digital, who are my water housing sponsors. I'm an ambassador for Aquatica Digital as well. So so that's really took off, and that's where that was the really big kickstarter that kind of changed my photography life forever, really. So it was just that one sort of portfolio of pictures that was kind of different and stood out.
So those underwater shots that really got your career going. Not only did you just go out and take photos for that, you did actually develop specific equipment to capture those shots, and equipment that maybe hadn't been done in the same way before, and maybe used sort of techniques that hadn't been used before to capture that shot. So in some ways you sort of changed the game, and really developed something new rather than just shooting a specific shot. So can you tell me a little bit about the development of the equipment, and did that come from the idea of a specific shot, or did you develop the equipment first and then come to that shot?
Well, I guess the way it came about is, well, for a start, two of my biggest sort of heroes in underwater photography, I suppose, and influencers, who I'm proud to say both become quite good friends in recent years, is a guy called David Doubilet and another guy called Alex Mustard, both well-renowned ocean photographers, and they have been doing split shots over unders a lot longer than I have, and they'd always put out there that the bigger the dome port you use, the easier the job is. And there's some very sort of deep physics reasons for that we won't go into, but essentially a bigger dome port, what it does is it puts the water line further away from the camera lens, which makes it smaller in shot, less obtrusive and more sharp because it becomes closer to focus. It's also, with a big dome port, it's easy to control a water line. So if you imagine a dome port that's this size and the ocean lapping across the front. And if I was trying to shoot it with a small port this size, it's obviously the ratio, it's very, very hard to control. So a bigger dome port's really easy to kind of get that waterline in the shot where you want it. And then there's all various other sort of, say, underwater physics about how images react underwater and refraction and things like that come into play too. So using a big dome port, because of those physics reasons, gives you much greater depth of field. So it makes it easier to be able to get a sharp image both under the waterline and above, which is essential for a lot of these shots to be successful, because you want to bring the viewer into two worlds. They want to be able to see the underwater part in detail, and they want to be able to see the above water part in detail. So before I was going on to the blue bottle shots, I was actually trying to shoot split shot landscapes. So reefs or like sand ripples and things like that in shallow, clear water at the same time as the sunrise, with beautiful cloud formations. And with dome ports that were commercially available at the time, so anything up to about 9 inches or 230 millimeters in diameter, wouldn't quite get me where I wanted to be. If I was very, very super close to some nice sand ripples on the seabed or some reef, in order to get that sharp, I couldn't get that sharp and the horizon and the sunrise sharp all in the same frame. So by using a bigger dome port and stopping down to f/22, which you have to do anyway, but by using a bigger dome port, increasing the depth of field in the picture enables you to do that. And there was no ports big enough to be able to pull off the shot I wanted that I could buy off the shelf. So coming from an engineering background, I kind of took it upon myself to design and manufacture an 18-inch dome port, which is a huge, great big thing like this. And I built it, still not really 100% certain if it would work. Took it out there and it was perfect. It worked absolutely out as I wanted it to, and it was creating some very, very beautiful shots that were starting to get noticed. I guess even before the blue bottle pictures, but they were the big hit. But yeah, so essentially, yeah, I did design and create, and I do now sell commercially these large dome ports.
Is it really important to have a good idea of the sea life that you're trying to photograph, and sort of, do you see yourself as some sort of, like a naturalist or an ecologist, or have you sort of developed that as you've gone on with your career?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask that, because no, I've got no background in marine biology or anything at all, but the way that my photography career has gone is I do sort of associate with a lot of those kind of people now. Like a lot of my good friends are marine biologists, and things, people I've met along the way. And personally, yeah, it does encourage you to self-educate, because to be able to get a good shot of an animal, you need to know its behaviour. You need to know what special things it does and when it does them and when it's likely to do them, so you can be ready and get the shot. So yeah, it's a lot of hours spent studying animals and reading about them and take to get the shots that you want. In fact, sometimes it works backwards. You find a crazy looking animal you've never seen before, and you get a great shot, but you don't even know what it is. So then you go home and educate yourself on that thing. But mostly, yeah, it's a bit of forward planning, a lot of time spent in the water studying, to be able to create the shots that stand out. So
you've been shooting for 13 years. You've got a lot of images, and a lot of diverse images. So I know it's probably quite tricky, but could you pick out 5 images that are either your favorite or particularly important to you, or show your career? So
yeah, I think I probably could. Probably in chronological order, actually, because these 5 pictures are probably very sort of significant keystones, I suppose, or steps along the way. So the first one, I think, would have to be a shot called Sailing, which was one of my first blue bottle shots that was featured in the London Natural History Museum. And that's of a blue bottle being blown across the surface of the water in quite a strong, windy morning. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a very pleasing shot to the eye. It was one of the shots that changed my photography career forever, and it holds a very close place in my heart, I suppose. One of my favourite shots I've ever taken. Then shortly after that shot was released, probably about 6 months later, I actually found myself over in Cuba on a particularly interesting shoot, where I was over there with Ocean Geographic shooting saltwater crocodiles. So there's an image, another split shot image, half over, half under image of of me, and I actually do have a shot of me getting this shot as well. Basically taking a split shot of a 2.5 meter American crocodile, which was, like I say, a very interesting day. Obviously, I was in the water shooting with a safety team and very, very careful planning behind that shot. It wasn't kind of jump in there with reckless abandon or anything. But yeah, that moment has etched itself in my brain for a long time. It's not very often you can remember the moment of pressing the shutter on one particular shot, but I do remember the exact moment of taking that picture for sure. Then after that, I think would have to be the squid photograph. So I called this one Celestial Terrestrial because it looks like an alien that lives on Earth, basically. Underwater squid are such charismatic creatures, and this particular shot, the squid's peering straight down the lens barrel. I was actually lying on my back on the seabed. It was about 4:00 in the morning because these guys are easier to shoot in the dark than they are in the daytime. They don't seem to want to come out or come near photographers in the daytime, but at night when you've got bright lights on, they seem to be attracted. And I wanted a particular angle that I'd never seen anyone shoot a squid before, which, like I say, involved laying on the seabed, looking up and allowing the animals to swim over me. And, of course, not exhaling any bubbles as well as the animal swims over to get the shot. So a bit of planning went into that one. Took a number of early mornings and crazy times for dives, but got there in the end. Then after that would be, I think, my enchanted seahorse shot. So this was a shot taken in Sydney Harbour. Now, in Sydney Harbour, there's designated swimming areas that are netted off, and these nets tend to get encrusted with sponges and algae, and it creates this beautiful diamond pattern of all these little windows, and you get these animals living in all these little windows created by the net. So I shot this image late in the afternoon when I knew the sun would be in the right position. So we've got this beautiful seahorse backlit by the evening sun. And then the final shot would probably be a very, very recent shot of mine, and it's of a humpback whale calf just coming up to breathe. I took this around October last year over in the Kingdom of Tonga. So this was a very young whale, probably only a few weeks or even a couple of months old, and its mother was way down below, and she was keeping a close eye on us, and the calf comes up to breathe. And that's when the sort of moment the shot was taken. But it was a very stormy, hard work day. I do remember that day. We'd been out in the water for about 7 hours, not found any animals, and the ocean was pretty rough and windy and rainy, and was on the verge of giving up when we came across this mother and calf and took this photo in quite adverse conditions. But it comes out very peaceful looking. You wouldn't believe the chaos that was going around when that frame was taken.
Yeah, you could certainly hide a lot of the sort of stress that goes into a lot of these. Yeah, it's an amazing amount of work that goes into those shots. And it's funny because 3 of those shots that you picked out are 3 that have stuck in my mind as well. I mean, I've been following your career for a long time, and particularly the crocodile shot was something that just blew my mind when I saw it. You know, I couldn't quite believe you could get that close and get something.
Smiling assassin. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I think it fits it really well.
So in this episode of the Ocean Show, we're looking at marine litter and plastic in the ocean. And obviously, with the amount of time you spend in the water, I just wondered if you see a lot of evidence of this, if you come across a lot of marine plastic.
Unfortunately do. Yeah, I do see quite a lot. I mean, some of the dive sites that have some of the interesting little critters. I've got a soft spot for blue ring octopus. I love going and shooting those. I love going and shooting pajama squid, and they all live in the local harbour. And there's a lot of sort of street debris blowing around in there. You kind of have to dive through them forever, picking up plastic bags and chip packets and crisp packets and all that kind of thing in the harbour. But even further afield, when you get out, you can get out to some really remote, beautiful spots. Out in the Coral Triangle, sort of Roger Ampat way on, and Papua New Guinea and things like that. And even way out to sea, sometimes you come across some devastating sites of, sort of nets, fishing, ghost nets as they're called, strewn across reefs and all that kind of thing. So it's definitely a huge issue. I mean, in my career, I don't think I've been shooting long enough to be able to recall a time when it was cleaner and nicer, but I definitely know there's older generations of photographers that have seen some devastating changes over their career time as regards to marine animals and the litter on the reefs, the decline of marine animals and the increase of litter on the reefs and things. So it's definitely a massive problem. Yeah. Obviously, something has to change. Like we obviously have to move away from plastics, essentially, by either creating like truly biodegradable versions of plastics, or the way we manage the plastics and recycling and things. There's got to be something. Whether it's going to come from the government, maybe partially. It's probably scientifically. There could be a remedy. I know there's certain things going on out in the sort of ocean garbage patches where they're trying to clean up and recycle a lot of the litter out there using big boom arms and all this kind of thing. I don't really have any information on that, but yeah, something's got to change, because we're just an infinite growing population, which creates an infinite amount of pollution on a finite planet. It's got to stop at some point. There's got to be that turning point, definitely.
Do you have a message for anyone who's looking to get into water photography? What would be your key sort of piece of advice?
I think the main piece of advice, everyone's got their own story, so I can only sort of talk from my experience. And from my experience, there's a lot of photographers out there. Like, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of people that want those very sort of precious few dream jobs. And I'm not even sure if a dream job as being a purely professional photographer even exists anymore. It's you've got to be prepared. Like, you've got to love it. It's got to be a passion. You've got to love it. You've got to be prepared to self-fund for a long time and build up your own experience and get your work out there. For me, like I say, it was through the competition route. I know there's one or two other people in this day and age that have gone the same kind of route. So, like I said, it's getting your work under the nose of the right people that are going to take notice, the big hitters in the industry, and they're often competition judges. So if you can sort of stick at it, put the years in, put the hard yards in, and self-fund and go out and get a great portfolio of pictures and pictures that make a difference, pictures that stand out, and get those into the competitions, then people will start to notice who you are. And that's the way I went. And I think your work has got to speak for itself. Like, you've got to have a strong portfolio, whichever route you take to try and get into this industry. I don't think anyone's just going to give you a job because you've got a great camera or anything like that by any stretch of imagination. It's really got to be a passion. It's got to be a labour of love, and you've got to put the work in. And if you put the work in, then you'll reap the rewards.